When I was a kid, my family and I would drive up north to my grandparents' camp in the summertime for family reunions. It was one of the only times of the year where my extended family would get together under one roof to share food and memories. The camp was along the lake and deep in the woods, so we were able to swim and relax without anyone bothering us. One of my favorite things about the camp was being able to drink fresh water from the well. Being from the city, the water never really tasted the best, so it was refreshing to drink water when hanging out at the camp. My grandparents had an old-fashioned well, the one that used the pulley system and bucket. I was always fascinated with it and thought it was really neat. We went to the camp one year when I was 12 years old. It was nighttime and we had just finished up swimming. My grandfather called out to all of us that dinner was ready and that they were ready to eat. Everyone would bring a dish with them to pass, so the cooking wasn't relied on one or two people to make. We all ran inside and grabbed our food to sit down at the table to eat together. My Uncle Tony always had the wildest stories from serving in the military and being stationed overseas. I remember sitting there intrigued to hear him talk to all of us while we would eat our food contently. I realized I ran out of water, so I grabbed my mug and walked outside to grab some water from the well. As I approached the well to grab some water, I hear what sounded like a woman crying. I looked around to see no one around me or near in the woods. I'm freaked out and getting nervous, so I quickly dropped the bucket down the well to collect water for my mug. As I do this, I hear a woman in a really soft voice say, "Please help me." Confused and anxious, I continue to look around to see if anyone was in the woods or the lake. Then this yell echoes from the depths of the well. I looked down, but it was too dark to see anything. I'm scared to death, so I quickly pull up the bucket to grab some water. As I fill my mug up with water, I see a clump of hair hanging on the side of the bucket. I scream and run inside to tell everyone what was going on. They all looked at me with the exception of my grandparents. Their faces showed sorrow as they looked down from me. My uncle comes out with me, bringing a flashlight, and we run up to the well. He takes the flashlight and aims it down the well, where we don't see anything. I also told him about the hair that was hanging off the bucket, and he checked, only to see that there was no hair hanging off the bucket. I told him I swear it was right there, and I heard something down the well. We walked back inside, and I was mortified at this point. The family looks at us as we walk in, and my uncle says, "I don't know, you know how kids are nowadays with wild imaginations." My grandparents look at all of us and said, "No, it's not out of imagination." My family all looked shocked to hear them say that, and my grandfather started to tell us the story of the well. He told us that we had an ancestor that fell down the well 66 years ago to the exact date. He said that she had died down there and that it was a horrible accident. My grandmother mentioned that when they would perform routine maintenance on the camp throughout the year, that they would hear cries from the well. They never mentioned it because they didn't want to freak anyone out and prevent people from coming to visit. I didn't sleep at all that night. Our family reunions now take place at my uncle's house. My family doesn't go near the camp anymore. Those cries and screams are burned into my mind, and I can't unsee the hair hanging off the side of the bucket. I haven't had well water since, and the water I'm drinking right now tastes like iron just thinking about it. I've always been a big fan of the outdoors, and there's no better rush than rock climbing and hiking, and I try to get out as much as I can. A few years back, I met some people in college that shared that same interest. Always hiking and always climbing, we hit it off really quickly and planned a trip at the end of the college semester. It was early December, and the semester ended, so we packed up our trekking backpacks, jumped in the car, and headed off to the Adirondacks in upstate New York. It was a fun trip, as we talked about activities and what we would do when we got out there. We finally made it, and the area was gorgeous. The forest and foliage was out of this world, and we couldn't wait to explore it all. So we unloaded the van and made our way up to the cabin that we were staying in. It was a cozy cabin, with cable television and a nice fireplace for when we would get cold. It was nighttime when we got there, so we decided to get some rest for the night before we took on the train in the morning. One of my friends couldn't sleep unless the TV was on, so we left it on and we tried to doze off. As I started to close my eyes to fall asleep, a news alert came on over the screen. My friends were already passed out, but it caught my attention. The news revealed an ongoing case of missing women in the Adirondack area. So far, 5 women were missing, and they wanted to make sure if anyone had information to contact the police. I didn't really think much of it, because I was stoked to be with my friends and in the wilderness. The next morning came and we got ready to head out. We grabbed our backpacks and made our way out the door. Luckily, we didn't have to drive anywhere since the trails ran through the woods right next to the cabin that we were staying in. Making our way up the trail, we decided to take a quick break. We had been walking for a solid 4 hours and found a nice river bend running through the mountains. We sat down for a bit and had a quick snack, talking about how stoked we were to be able to do this. It was pretty chilly out, so we didn't want to sit down for too long and get cold. I brought a camera along with me on the trip and decided to take some pictures of the river and the mountains before we made our way back up on the trails. It was a beautiful area, with forest and trees covering up the riverbank. I walked up to the river, and the next thing I would see would scar me. As I looked down into the river, I see these cold dead eyes staring up at me through the water. I freaked out, stumbling back, and my friends could tell something was up, so they made their way over to me. Before I could stop them, I start to have a panic attack. My friends look down into the water and see the eyes staring back at them too. One of my friends was able to make out that it was a woman barely clothed, laying in the river who appeared to be dead. She looked like she was there for a few days and that the cold December air preserved her body. Her neck looked bruised and disjointed out of place. Once we realized what was going on, we scrambled back up the hill. Luckily, my friend came prepared and brought a satellite phone in case of an emergency, and we called the police. The police showed up and closed off the scene. The woman in the water was one of the missing people that was broadcasted on the news the night prior. I had completely forgot about it since I was too excited to hang out with my friends and enjoy the mountain air. We had left the cabin, cutting our trip short, and we made our way back home. The ride back was awkward with a lot of concerns and questions. Our trip that was supposed to be a nice getaway ended up being a terrifying experience. A few weeks later, they were able to find the person who was abducting these women and put him behind bars. He was a serial killer who had been at it for a few years but got away with it until now. I won't forget that trip to the Adirondacks. I never stopped climbing and hiking, but that cold dead stare will always haunt me when I make my way through the wilderness. The day was sunny and beautiful, perfect to sit out and spend time with my boyfriend and his family. It was his birthday, so I drove up an hour to spend time with all of them. My car had a lot of issues starting before COVID hit, and when it did, it set me back from fixing it. Needless to say, I missed a lot of holidays and birthdays last year, and spending time with him. Even going from seeing my boyfriend almost every weekend was set back dramatically. I was finally able to have it fixed, and I felt like his birthday was a perfect time to see everyone. The day was a blast. I hardly realized it was past 9 when we finished catching up while enjoying birthday cake. It was sad to leave, but we all said our goodbyes. I felt sad, but knowing that it wouldn't be as hard seeing them now that my vehicle was up for the trip. My boyfriend, being the gentleman he has always been, walked me out to my car. We said our goodbyes and shared a kiss, while I promised to text him as soon as I got home. The sun was setting as the skies looked a familiar deep-set orange with hints of cotton candy in between, as I set my GPS and music for the hour drive home. I drove slowly down the driveway and set on the main route and was pleasantly surprised to see no headlights or cars on the road. My perfect setting for a long drive. I'm a very anxious driver, especially when it's dark, so I immediately turned my brights on to make sure there's no deer around. Considering the light amount of traffic, I saw none. About 10 minutes into my drive with no one but me on the rural road, approaching an intersection, I noticed a car waiting for me to pass to turn into my lane. Not surprised that my perfect little road trip wouldn't last long, I immediately turned off my brights and passed. I looked to my rear view, and that's when I noticed a standard black sedan turning into my lane behind me. I noticed that they were speeding up a bit fast, so I anxiously sped up a little past the speed limit. The black sedan didn't seem to think that was fast enough, so they turned on their brights and turned to the left to pass me. Me being a female alone on the dark deserted county route, not knowing who was in the vehicle, decided to back down and let them pass. They sped up and all seemed fine. When I thought they were far enough away, I turn my brights back on, only to see the tail end of their car. I guess the black sedan took this as a sign of aggression and immediately pressed on their brakes. I noticed this and I was coming behind them fast, so I slowed down and turned off my brights. They drove up about 2 car lengths in front of me, and as they saw me approaching, they slammed their brakes and I slowed down again. Now I read and listen to a lot of Let's Not Me horror stories, so I immediately started to get anxious, but tell myself to calm down as I was driving, and a panic attack may not be the best for me. We proceeded to play the brake game for 5 minutes, with them never really doing anything but slowing down and speeding up to scare me. I kept telling myself to stay calm and just continue to stay as far behind as I could before I could reach the interstate. As I'm thinking this, I see a Jeep looking to turn into our lane on the right. The black sedan starts to drive normally. As I pass the Jeep, it turns into our lane behind me, and I immediately thank whatever higher power who was looking over me that night. The realization set in that I had 15 minutes until I was able to reach the interstate, and his Jeep behind me could turn off at any time. The black sedan stays in front of me with no sign of turning. I continue my driving, keeping my distance, hoping the Jeep behind me doesn't think I'm going to slow down, and also try to pass me. The Jeep stays behind me. Luckily, we are now 2 minutes away from my turnoff to the Interstate South exit. I pass the Interstate North exit and look in my rear view to notice to my dismay that the Jeep was pulling off onto the Interstate North exit, leaving me in the black sedan yet alone for another 2 minutes until my turnoff. I start to sweat and grip the wheel, praying that they stay straight and don't turn off onto the Interstate South exit. Immediately after the Jeep turns off, we continue our game of brake check from earlier. Something in the back of my mind, maybe it was instinct, I don't know, tells me not to use my turn signal until the last second of me turning off on my exit. I didn't want them to attempt to follow me if they were actually from this area and just messing around. A car from my left pulls behind me as we pass again, ending our game as the sedan begins to drive normally again. My exit is about 45 seconds away. I hold my signal until the car in front of me stays straight. Once I see they have no room to change their mind, I turn on my signal and turn onto the interstate. I felt bad for the car behind me, but I knew to trust my instincts, telling me this was the best option. I'm on the highway, and the rest of the way home I was paranoid that they did a U-turn to follow me. I continue to look around and behind me. There was luckily no sign of them, and the rest of my ride was smooth. Also, for anyone who may wonder why I didn't get their plates, every time they got close enough for me to read them, they sped up again. Black sedan, let's never meet again. This entry comes from one of the most disturbing cases I was ever assigned to. I was a detective for the Amityville Police Department from '96 to 2003. I had seen a lot of crazy stuff while being on the force, but nothing will ever come close to that experience in June of '99. I remember getting a call while I was out on patrol to come to a crime scene. Without hesitation, I floored to the location and parked my vehicle. The place was already swarmed with police cruisers by the time I got there. As I make my way inside of the house, I'm greeted by a deputy. He escorted me throughout the house, and as I'm walking behind him, I see bloodstains painted across the walls. There was also a blood trail leading into the dining area, where I discovered 4 bodies. 3 of the victims were practically unidentifiable due to the wounds that they had received. The 4th body was of a girl, in her mid to late teens, with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to her head. The place was an absolute horror show. It was hard to stomach from what I was seeing, but I kept a strong backbone. The deputy who led me through pointed to a table that had drawings and notes written on them. He mentioned that I should take a look at it to gather ideas on what could have possibly happened that day. I walked over to the table and took a look at the drawings. I see a sketch of a painting that was hanging in that room next to the windows. The drawing was exaggerated, with symbols drawn around the painting. Underneath it read, "He is here, here to cleanse. This family is evil. I must do his bidding. Cleanse the family. They don't want you here. Do it quickly, and cleanse yourself from the selfish world." It just seemed odd. What was so important and strange about this painting? I decided to take a look at the other page next to it. It read, My parents came home with this painting last year and I was mesmerized by it. The painting speaks to me. I can see his precious eyes. I hear him speak to me. I'm not sure if they think this is some sick joke, but they don't see what I see. They clearly don't know how this painting affects me. They've been calling me crazy and I can't take it any longer. This family needs to be cleansed. For him, for me, and for their own good. Something about this painting drove this young girl mad to the point where she practically worshipped it. She murdered her family for the sake of cleansing them. She then took her own life to cleanse herself. It made absolutely no sense, and the fact that this family had to suffer because of it was really sad and sickening. I took a look around to see if there was any other clues I might be missing. I also took a good look at the painting. It was beautiful. It was a portrait of a young man sitting in a royal chair, with an eclipsed moon behind him in the distance. It was very eloquently painted, but I didn't see anything that would cause the young girl to be consumed by it. The police gathered the painting as evidence, and the 3 bodies were taken away in body bags. They were about to zip up the young girl, and I took one good look at her face. She died with a grin. It was a reality nightmare, one you'd hear in a horror story. I can't believe what I had witnessed that day, and the grin that girl expired with has stuck with me ever since. Thank you so much for being here and taking time out of your day to check this video out. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing to know when new videos release in the near future. I hope you're all well and staying safe. Thanks again, and I'll see you soon.